Welcome in, everybody. And this is our 4th of July special. It is also our 250th anniversary of America becoming America. I served in the Marine Corps. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, combat vet. So I'm excited about this show. And today we're going to go over the list of NFL players that have ever played that were born on the 4th of July. I'm pretty excited to honor these guys. And big shout out to all of the service members out there. Anybody who ever's fought, anybody who's a brother in arms or sister in arms, however you want to say it. So, guys, welcome in. You guys ready to get this thing started?
Let's get it.
Got anything you want to say before we dive in?
You hit it. Thank you to everyone who served our country, the greatest country in the world. Excited to celebrate it. Excited to talk about some guys born on the 4th. Let's get it.
And this goes way back, guys, because the first guy was born in 1931. So I'm going to go down this list real quick. We got, and I'm probably going to screw up these names, but Coach Dan from Trench Mafia is here. We got Raider Greg here. Also, guys, before we start the show, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and leave us a comment letting us know what you guys think. All right, the first guy we got on the list is Rick Cazares, I believe his name is. Played for the Chicago Bears. We got Roosevelt Taylor, safety for the Chicago Bears. We got Floyd Little, which I will be talking about, who's on our cover from the Denver Broncos, running back. Emerson Boozer, running back for the Jets. Carl Withrow, he was a center for the Chargers, Packers, and the Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals. Frank Lewis, wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Buffalo Bills. He's also a two-time Super Bowl winning champion. Todd Marinovich, hope I said that right. Probably didn't. Always butcher it up. Yeah, of course I did. Greg knew I was coming in. Marinovich.
There you go.
Marinovich. However, anyway, quarterback for the Los Angeles Raiders. Leroy Glover, defensive tackle for the Raiders, Saints, Cowboys, and the St. Louis Rams. We're going to be talking about both those last two guys, Todd and Glover. Pete Gonzalez played quarterback for Pittsburgh Steelers. And then two guys that are still currently in the NFL. Xavier Howard. Did I say that right, guys? Okay.
There you go.
I know the guy. I just never remember how to say his first. I always call him X Howard. Corner, Miami Dolphins. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler, first team All-Pro in 2020, and NFL interception leader in 18 and 20. And then the last guy that's still currently in the NFL is Jamie Gillen. I believe that's how you say his name. Punter for the Cleveland Browns, the Giants, and I believe he's on the Bengals now. I'm not too sure about that, but that's where we're at with them. So the biggest names in the video we're going to really talk about that we really want to dive into is Floyd Little. He's the only Hall of Famer on the list. We're going to talk about Glover. The other is another guy that's on the list, but you got Rick Cazares, who won. These are the Pro Bowl lists. So you got Rick Cazares, who won five Pro Bowlers. Roosevelt Taylor was 2. Floyd Little was 5. Glover was 6. Howard, who's in the NFL now, has 4. Only 2 Super Bowl champions. Emerson Boozer won Super Bowl 3. And then Frank Lewis won 2 Super Bowls as well. So diving into Floyd Little a little bit, what's really cool about him is if you take what he did up to his date and to his era of football, and you go back and you look at the people before him, the guys that played running backs before him this is before the Super Bowl era. This is up until 1966. There's only 2 guys in front of him that had more rushing yards, and that's Jim Brown with over 12,000 yards and Joe Henry Johnson with 6,800 yards. Floyd Little's right behind him with 6,300, just over 6,300 yards in the top 10 list, which is pretty cool. So he's third out of that list. So we can see why he's the only Hall of Famer on this list. And as far as touchdowns go, out of all those guys, pre-Super Bowl era, he's ranked 8th. I'm sorry, he would be ranked 9th with 43 touchdowns, right behind Rick Cazares, who had 49. Jim Brown was the first one with 106. So it's pretty cool that these guys played and had an impact from back then. One unique cool thing back then too, with about Floyd Little, his rushing yards per carry was 3.9. So that's pretty good for back then. And he was known, his nickname was the franchise. And it's because his signing is widely credited with helping the Denver Broncos keep the Denver Broncos in Denver during the AFL era of football. So that's pretty cool. So again, he's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He was the class of 2010, 5-time Pro Bowler, first team All-Pro in 1969, NFL rushing champ in 1970, NFL rushing leader in 71. So it's pretty awesome. What do you guys think?
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean,
it's good for our fans and everyone to understand the history of the game, because football is the greatest game in the world, and I think people get really short-sighted with it. Talking about running backs like, oh, it's Derrick Henry, or maybe people remember Emmitt Smith. And even younger kids now don't. So I think it's cool to talk about that stuff.
100%. One thing with Little, there was a playoff game. It might have been an AFC championship game with the Broncos and the Raiders. He fumbled. He clearly fumbled. Now that we have replay, we can see that he fumbled. Referees overturned it, cost the Raiders a playoff game. Just saying, a little bit of little history nugget for you there.
60 years later, still bitter.
Yeah.
Like
I wasn't even born yet. I'm still bitter about it. Yeah.
Right.
I just think, like, up until that point, you're like, dude, this guy could have been, if he would have been back, if he would have played sooner in that era. I mean, who knows then? But just to think that his numbers stack up and he's third, he would be third on that list behind Jim Brown, and almost second on the list behind Jim Brown if it wasn't for John Henry Johnson, who I don't know anything about. I mean, you got Joe Perry on that list. There's a few other guys, Frank Gifford on that list at 10, stuff like that. So, especially in a run heavy, football used to be run heavy back then. So it ain't like airing it out every play like nowadays. So I think that's pretty cool. Even though I don't like talking about Broncos, but I do respect a guy that can get it done like that. So awesome. All right, Coach Dan, what you got?
All right. I got the great Todd Marinovich. And me talking about him isn't about statistically what he did. It's what his journey was, and I think the lessons that can be taken away from it. So Todd Marinovich's dad was a captain at USC. His uncle was a quarterback at USC. But his dad was the first ever strength conditioning coach in the NFL when he got hired by Al Davis. Later on, he had opened an athletic training center, and the techniques he used there, he had used on Todd when he was little, to the point where he wasn't even out of a crib yet, and dad was working on him. He was only fed pure foods, organic foods, and they turned him into what they had called the Robo QB. It's making a perfect athlete. You're talking about someone who had broken the Orange County passing record. Orange County, California, place where some of the best quarterbacks have come from. And he had the national record of almost 10,000 passing yards coming out of high school. And they had called him the first test tube athlete because of the way he was trained, the way that he was worked since a young age. But he eventually picked USC like his dad, but they said he had never eaten fast food. He had never had an Oreo. When he went to birthday parties, he took his own cake and ice cream to avoid the sugar and the refined flours that were in cake. So you're talking about a kid who was extremely sheltered, And essentially it broke him down from being a kid who at 1 month old, dad was stretching his hamstrings and then he was having him do push-ups, and the stress of it all torpedoed his whole career. They said in high school, he started drinking after games. He smoked weed daily. You're talking about someone who, with all of the hype, all of the pressure, like, he turned to everything else. And when he went to USC, he was in a difficult position of trying to follow his father's rules and experiencing things for the first time because he had lived such a confined life. But you're talking about a kid who won college freshman of the year and was all Pac-10 and was a Heisman contender. But again, the pressures of it, he was skipping classes, he got suspended, he started playing poorly, and then he got arrested for cocaine possession. And so he entered the NFL draft, and the Raiders took him in the first round at pick 24 despite that. And they took him ahead of Brett Favre. But as a rookie, he played sparingly until he ended up getting the start in 92. And against the Eagles, 3 of his first 10 passes got intercepted. And the former starter took the job and never gave it back. And during his rookie year, they said the partying got bad, the drug use got bad. He got suspended for it. He was using other people's urine for tests, and then those people were causing him to fail. And then he turned to LSD because it didn't show up on drug tests. So that ended his NFL career. He tried Canada, but in Canada, he got hurt after he got hurt when he was recovering. One of his friends introduced him to heroin, and then he got arrested for drug possession again. And then to wrap up Marinovich's career, he played semi-professional football at the age of 48. And after a 17-year hiatus from playing, and said it was the first time he'd played a football game sober since he was 15. So you're looking at someone who was considered a perfect specimen. And we talk about this game when we're evaluating it. You're looking at the Anthony Richardsons, looking at like how fast are they, how big are they, how far can they throw it. But this game is so mental. And as a coach myself, you look at the pressures of not only the kids putting on themselves, but now it's social media, society, but it's the parents. You're looking at maybe the first case study of parental overstepping, ruining a kid's future. They did all of these things to try to make him into something that he just crumbled under the expectations. And I think that's really relevant to where sports are now, particularly in the world of NIL, where parents are counting on their kids to make checks for them instead of letting kids be kids. And it's ruining the kids, it's ruining their futures, and it's leading them down paths that it's really hard to come back from. And Marinovich is a perfect example of that. You're talking about a guy whose first wife, his ex-wife, he met in rehab. He asked her on a date while he was still in rehab. They had 2 kids, and now he's, I think, living in Hawaii. But you move to a place like that to get away from everyone. Nobody there knows his name. Nobody knows his story. Nobody cares. And from a kid who at 1 month old, his dad was stretching his hamstrings, and before he could walk, he had him trying to do push-ups. that's probably a nice little exile for him to get away from it all. But you're talking about Pro Bowlers and All Pros and Hall of Famers. This is the exact opposite. Someone who should have been, but was ruined by the expectations and don't know how to cope with it. And I think that's really real in today's game.
Yeah, just to point something out here too. On the football side of things, because it's a sad story behind it, but on the field, before him at pick 16 was a man named Dan McGuire, drafted by Seattle. He threw 2 touchdowns and 6 picks his entire career. Todd had 8 touchdowns, 9 picks. It's a little bit better.
And then you have Brett Favre.
And then you have Brett Favre in the second round.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, holy cow. But yeah, no, I get it, though.
Cautionary tale for sure. As as a father, that's something that I try to be cognizant of is, let the kids be kids and whatever they're into, whether it's football, 4-H, basketball, track, golf. All you can really do is support them and make sure that you understand that, or rather that they understand it's not about the success, right? That's not why we're proud. We're proud because of the effort you put forth. And I think that goes a lot further than anything on any field, frankly. But Marinovich should have been the guy.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. As somebody that's had somebody in sports and also have had 2 sons that are one served 4 years in the Marine Corps, the other's in the Marine Corps right now. And I never made it a point for them to follow my footsteps. I wasn't out there drilling my kids. I wasn't out there making sure they knew how to shoot at that age. Like, dude, be kids. Now, my son Cody, Dan, you've met him and stuff like that, and coached him on offense and stuff. Like, he was just highly into football since the age of 4, and we pushed him as much as he wanted. But then it got to a point where he was like, okay, I'm done. And it's like, okay. And we move on. Like, we find something else. And, now he's in college and doing great and stuff like that. So it's like you were saying, Greg, too, you got to let kids be kids. You can't do that to them, man. It'll ruin you so many different ways.
Yeah. And I mean, you were a quarterback dad, so
yeah.
Like it's tough because it's like, I know like you had Cody going to training and you were spending money on that stuff. And it's like, your first instinct is like, I need a return on my investment. Like, I spent all this money on all this stuff and you just want to step away. But like, part of being a parent.
Exactly. So I didn't know much about him. I've seen, whatever highlights they show when they show old school Raider stuff. More Raiders historians know a little bit more about him than I do. Was he good? Like, I mean, you guys talked about some of the stuff here and there and stuff like that, but was he actually that kind of a dude coming in?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking out of 10,000 passer in high school. And I mean, the Raiders took him in the first round despite a drug charge. Like, that tells you how talented this kid was.
Yeah.
He went to SC and did great things, and he was in the Heisman conversation, and then the pressure of it, the wheels fell off, and that was just kind of the song on repeat for him.
Because at that time in 92, Al Davis was the coach. Or not the coach. Al Davis was the owner of the Raiders, correct, Dan?
Right.
Or, I mean, correct, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the LA Raiders still. And when you're a USC guy that's in the Heisman talk and then you go play for the Raiders, I mean, that's another level of pressure because you're in LA, you're in Hollywood, all the celebrities are coming out. And he was really in a tough spot with a lot of pressure.
So what I'm trying to lean into here is a little bit is that, so we get the facts right here. Al Davis, Raiders owner, We know he likes those big quarterbacks, big, strong quarterbacks, highlight type dudes, number one pick type dudes. But we got to remember, Brett Favre wasn't that kind of guy in college, though.
No.
You know, I mean,
Not-
look, in
not
high
even-
school, he
had
didn't do, what is he,
he had
running wing tee and shit?
Yeah.
That's what his
He had the
dad was
big
making him
arm,
run or
but-
something?
He was another guy who was just wild and out of control. And, you know, when he went to Atlanta, who was the old Atlanta Falcons head coach? I can see him in my mind, but I can't think of his name.
Talking about Dan Reeves.
No, it was before Dan Reeves. I don't know,
man.
but he hated him. He put him on the end of the bench. He called him Mississippi, whatever. But yeah, he didn't do him any favors. And then obviously got traded to Green Bay, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, Brett Favre's senior year, he threw for 1,500 yards. He had 7 touchdowns and 6 interceptions.
You're talking about Jerry
Mississippi State.
Glanville.
Jerry Glanville. There you go. Yep.
Jerry Glanville. Yeah, buddy. Oh, I love this history lessons. I think we need to go back a little bit. I think we need to go back and have just like a podcast history lesson every so often on these. It's awesome.
Yes.
Hell yeah. But what I wanted to say real quick before you go, Greg. Dan, you mentioned earlier it's really cool about going over history about all these guys, and I agree with that, especially because like these running backs, we'll just stick with the running back position for a second. You were talking about Derrick Henry. Like if you asked Derrick Henry who was your top running backs, it wasn't that long ago that these guys were playing in the NFL. And then you just keep asking guys back, and it just keeps going back and back and back and back and back.
Right.
And it's like, okay, you can see the evolution of where these guys are molded from. And it basically all goes back to like the same group of people, if not the same one running back and Jim Brown type guy. And then it's just evolved. Walter Payton, Jim Brown, and it's just evolved over O.J. Simpson, baby, who's not getting in the, what is it, the Buffalo Bills Hall of Fame? Something, or Ring of Honor? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, so yeah, I love the history lesson. All right, Greg, what you got for us?
All right. So one of the things that I love about football, and specifically the National Football League, is it's not like basketball. It's not like golf or tennis or one of the other individual sports where, you know, a lot of times you got Michael Jordan, you got the superior athlete dominates the game. Leroy Glover, I don't think anybody is going to look at him and think, oh man, he was so physically gifted. He could run the highest, or he could run the fastest, jump the highest, be the big. He was an effort guy, right? A lot like my favorite player, best DN in the league, Max Crosby, right? Guys who come out and they give you full effort for years and years and years. You got to have guys like that on your team if you're going to be successful. And Leroy Glover is one of them dudes that I think he's one of the most underrated players of the early 2000s, frankly. Give you a quick rundown. The coolest story before I get started in the rundown on him, when he was, I believe, in middle school, the coolest story I found about him, there was a bully in his class. And one day, that bully decided he was going to pick on Leroy Glover. Leroy Glover literally threw him out a window. So if that doesn't scream NFL D tackle, I don't know what does. That's a killer story. But he was born on the 4th of July, 1974, lived in San Diego, played at San Diego State with the Aztecs. He was drafted by our Raiders, 5th round, pick number 166 as a 6'2", 280-pound D tackle. So undersized effort guy. He only played a couple games for the Raiders, and then he went to NFL Europe, where he became a champion. He played 1 year for Barcelona. They won the championship. When he came back the previous season, the Raiders released him. He caught on with New Orleans, where he played for some coach named Mike Ditka. Yeah, he might have known what he was doing. He played 5 seasons for New Orleans, totaling 50 sacks. His best season was in 2000. He had 17 sacks from a nose tackle. That's sick. He ended up the runner-up as Defensive Player of the Year to some guy named Ray Lewis. He had a pretty good year in 2000. You can probably go look that up. From there, he went to Dallas, played 4 seasons for the Big Tuna himself, and then finished up his career with 3 seasons with the Rams. Career totals, 83.5 sacks, not too shabby for a guy that was too undersized to play in the National Football League. Got there with pure effort and attitude. And when you hear the guys that played with him talk, that's what they talk about. He was the steady force in the room at all times. He ended up being a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro second team, and he was All-Pro first team 1 time, and he was on the All 2000s team. So NFL, put this dude in the Hall of Fame, please. He deserves it. Not to mention, born on the 4th of July.
Before we jump off of Glover, I swear I'm a huge football card collector. I've got football cards going back to when I was a kid. And for some reason, I probably have 1 million Leroy Glover football cards that are just epic. I'm going to go try to find my Raider ones because that would be dope if I had one. That would be super sick if I had one. And yes, you are right. He needs to be in the Hall of Fame. The dude just is jacked too. He looked, he looks good in the Saints uniform and stuff like that. But when he got to Dallas, he just looked like a just absolute monster.
I mean,
I believe he had didn't he have the 1 bar, I believe?
Full face mask most seasons. And then, the Raiders really screwed up. I'm not sure why they didn't keep him or why he only played 2 games in 96. I believe we had Chester McLaughlin and some other big dudes in there. And Al Davis, obviously, calling the shots at the time, height, weight, speed guy. And Leroy Glover didn't really fit into that mold, right? But everywhere Leroy Glover went, he won. Went, played NFL Europe, won a championship. Went to the Saints. He was actually on the team that won the first Saints playoff game in the history of their franchise. Then he went to Dallas. He was a main cog in the number 1 defense in the league with Bill Parcells, the least yards given up, I believe. And then went to St. Louis, was on some good teams there. So, everywhere he went, all he did was win. That's what you want, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, so for a finale special, we have a huge shout out and absolute legend of the history of the NFL who's joining our NFL 4th of July club is what we're calling it for a birthday shout out for this 250-year anniversary that we're celebrating. Greg, go ahead.
Well, the late, the great, the GOAT, Al Davis. Happy birthday on the 4th of July. The only guy that was coach, owner, won an AFL championship, won NFL championships. He's in the NFL Hall of Fame. If you're making a Mount Rushmore of the National Football League, Al Davis is front and center on that Mount Rushmore. So I can credit Al Davis with me being a Raiders fan because it was the image of the Raiders that originally drew me to them as far as the, just the attitude they brought to the football field. I can remember I grew up in the Midwest. I was stuck watching the Chiefs, the Vikings, the Packers, all these teams that, they had some good teams here and there. But, man, the first time, and I can tell you the exact game, it was the last week of the season, Raiders, Broncos in the LA Coliseum. Al Davis is strutting around in his all-white jumpsuit. Broncos and Raiders, there's a fight or a penalty every single game. It was unlike any other football game I have ever seen in my life, and I was immediately drawn to the Raiders, and that was produced and put in place by Al Davis. And when you listen to Al talk about the type of football team he wanted to have, it was the power of the Yankees with the speed of the Brooklyn Dodgers. And I think he accomplished that in spades. And I hope, he'd be proud of where the Raiders are at now. I think they're moving in the right direction. They got a beautiful stadium. Mark is doing his thing, and much success in the future. But happy birthday to Al Davis, born on the 4th of July, the GOAT.
Yeah, absolutely. And you cannot say NFL without mentioning the late great Al Davis. And that white jumpsuit, man, that thing is still clean. We saw Tom Brady rocking that upper jacket, man. I got to get me one of those, man. Those things are so fly.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, there's nobody like Al Davis. And yeah, great happy birthday to him, and happy birthday to all the other NFL 4th of July club guys that we listed before and talked about. Great show today. Thanks for coming in, Greg. Everybody, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and leave us a comment letting us know if we missed anybody and your thoughts on some of the other guys that were on the list. Go Raiders, and happy Independence Day, everyone.